We are CUC. You can count on us.
It's hump day.
Roll back. Roll back. Every Wednesday for February, March, and April, all Rubus service stations are rolling back the price on full-service price fuel 20 cents. Every customer will save 20 cents on every gallon of fuel purchased on Wednesdays. Roll back. Roll back.
All Flow retail stores are now closed. To reach our customer care team and retail teams, customers may email k-flowhelp@cwc.com or contact our virtual store on WhatsApp at 925-3569. Remember, you can make payments to your bill and top up your prepaid accounts via the website. Visit discoverflow.ky or make payments to your bill and top up prepaid accounts via the mobile app.
Live from Star 927 Studios in the center of Cayman's capital city, Georgetown. This is Straight Talk with Ruth Anna.
Good evening, everybody. You are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young, always honored to be your host here on Straight Talk every Monday through Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here and nowhere else other than Star 92.7. It is 5:01 on the Star 92.7 clock, and it is the 15th of April. Can't believe we have already hit the middle of this month. 2020, as chaotic as it may be, is flying on by. Today's show, I am joined by four nurses that are currently practicing in the United States of America from different cities, different states, different specialties, different departments, talking about their experiences thus far during this global pandemic. As the premier pointed out during today's press briefing, at this time, the United States is, I guess, the epicenter of this with the highest number of cases globally. So, going to talk to them today to share, to find out about their experiences today. We are streaming live video from the Star 92.7 Facebook page. And of course, you can also join in via the radio. 943-3700 is the line in the studio. You can also WhatsApp me 324-1565, or if talking ain't your thing, you can email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. But you guys know the deal. Before we go any further into this conversation, we always start our time with the reading of today's Daily Bread. Just a moment focused on God and meditating on his word. So today's Daily Bread is entitled Pity to Praise. And the scripture comes from 2 Timothy 4, verse 17, and reads, "But the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength." The writer goes on to write, at a coat drive for children, excited kids searched gratefully for their favorite colors and proper sizes. They also gained self-esteem, an organizer said, with new coats boosting their acceptance by peers and school attendance on winter days. The Apostle Paul seemed to need a coat as well when he wrote to Timothy, "Bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas." Held in a cold Roman prison, Paul needed warmth but also companionship. "No one came to my support, but everyone deserted me." When he faced a Roman judge, his words pierced our hearts with the honesty of this great missionary's pain. Yet in these final words of Paul's last recorded letter, his closing thoughts after an astounding ministry, he moves from pity to praise. "But the Lord stood at my side," he adds, and his words rally our hearts. As Paul declared, "God gave me strength so that I might preach the good news in its entirety for all the Gentiles to hear, and he rescued me from certain death." If you're facing a crisis, lacking even the right clothing for warmth or close friends to help, remember God. He's faithful to revive, provide, and deliver. Why? For his glory and for our purpose in his kingdom. Thanks be to God for that word today. As always, here on Straight Talk, we remind you, we encourage you to spend time each and every day focused on his word, meditating on his grace and how awesome he is, whether it be the morning or the evening or right here with me, Monday through Thursday on Straight Talk. With that, I will open up my microphones, invite my guest into the conversation this afternoon. For those of you who are just tuning in, whether you have joined us via radio video or joined us via our live Facebook video stream, I am joined today by 4 nurses that are currently in the United States of America during this global pandemic. They are in different states, different hospitals, different specialties, but they have agreed to join me today to speak to their individual experiences. And I'm excited to get to talk to them just to put some perspective on all of this. As we know, every day the numbers across the world are climbing, and unfortunately, so is the death toll. But there's always an end in sight, and I want to speak to them to hear about adjustments they've had to make, challenges and fears that they may have, the ever fluid situation. And one of the things that many of them have indicated is that it changes daily. So I'm going to spend the next hour talking to these fine ladies on the front line of the United States healthcare system. So I will ask each of you, and I guess we will, I don't know if it may be better to do it in alphabetical order. So in all fairness, for people to introduce themselves, and for privacy purposes, none of them will share their actual hospital name on today's show, but we'll tell you what city or state that they are in. So I'm going to be fair and go by in alphabetical order. So I have Ashley, who is with us today. So Ashley, if you could just introduce yourself to the listening public, tell them a bit about what state or city you're in, your background as a healthcare professional, and then we will pass the microphone on.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I live in Florida, in Orlando area, and I've been a nurse for 7 years. I currently work in labor and delivery.
All right. Thank you so much. And I think next up would be Mawish in alphabetical order. So if you could do the same, Mawish, if you could share a bit about your healthcare background and where you are.
Well, hi, everyone. I am Mawish. I have been a nurse for 10 years and working mostly in the telemetry cardiac area, but I float around in different areas of the hospital.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Next up, we have Miss Rhonda. If you could do the same, please.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Williams. I've been a nurse for 16 years, and I work in the Broward, Miami area.
All right. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Miss
South
Stacy.
Florida.
All right. Thank you. Miss Stacy, if you could just introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I've been a nurse for the last 8 years. Currently, I'm working in psychiatric mental health, and I'm currently in the Stanton, Virginia area.
All right. And I thank you all for taking time to join me. I know that this is, I guess, an unprecedented time in our lifetime in the healthcare system. And I think that nurses in any capacity are on the front line of this. I know that Ms. Rhonda, you are more on an administrative end at this time, but you have also, in the course of our conversations leading up to this, there have been adjustments in all aspects of life in your field of work. And so I want to do a stat check, right? So, Mawish, I know that the hospital that you are currently at is actually a COVID hospital, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Correct.
And what for those who may not know what that means, if you could just, when you say it's a COVID hospital, what are we talking about here?
Oh, so I am working here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And basically they have transformed a long-term acute care facility into a COVID hospital. So they moved all those long-term patients out, and they are only accepting patients from different hospitals within their current system that are confirmed positive patients. So we have an ICU side and we have a med-surg side for confirmed positive patients that do currently have corona.
Okay. And how long have you been at that particular hospital?
It's been a few weeks now, since the March 24th I've been here.
Okay, and just to put it into, because there are some other questions that I'll ask, but during the course of our conversation, you were in another state or city before going to that particular hospital.
Houston is my home base.
Okay.
So I work for a hospital system in Houston, but I also take travel contracts in different areas and different places in the city.
Okay. And so I know we had some discussions about what the difference has been, in terms of being in the two hospitals. I think I'm getting a listener is mentioning that there's some background noise. I don't know if there's anyone moving anything around or anything, but we'll do the best we can to get rid of any interference. And I know that Ashley, you're currently in labor and delivery in Orlando, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and is that you're generally in L&D, in labor and delivery?
For the last 3 years. Before that, I used to do PCU.
Okay, and I know that there's been a lot of local conversation here in regards to rules and regulations that have been put in place in terms of our own maternity wards here. And I know they made some adjustments in the public hospital recently. But if you could just share at your hospital, are any adjustments have they been made during this time in regards to what would otherwise be normal procedure in the maternity wards or in the maternity
Um,
ward where you're at?
yes, there's been quite a few. Every day it changes. So every time I go into work, it's something different. But as of now, we only allow one visitor with the patient. So if a mom is coming in to have her baby, she's only allowed one. There's no longer any doulas allowed. We used to have doulas come in, but they're no longer allowed. And whoever her person that she chooses, whether it's spouse or mom, sister, they're just allowed that one. They can't switch out. It's only that one throughout the time that she's there in the hospital.
Okay. And I know that we've had a lot of debate about that. So I think that it helps persons here know that our elected officials and our hospital administrators are not being unreasonable, because these are things that are being outruled everywhere. I know we went through a period where there were no guests, even the father allowed in the hospital, because there was a no visitor policy. But to my understanding, that has since changed, and they're allowed one guest as well. So that seems to be a policy that's being adapted across the board. And for you, Stacy, you are in a mental health facility in Virginia, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
But it's and so just and people, I think that what was important to me in my conversations with all of you is that I will admit that as a general public, we sometimes only think of the ICU during times like this. That's the reality. We think ICU and forget that every other aspect of healthcare and medicine is affected through all of this. And so, in the facility that you are working in presently, is it like a residential facility, or, like, explain the dynamics of the facility that you're in for me, please?
Okay, with the facility that I'm working in, we see both acute and long-term cases. So with our acute unit, you're probably there for anything between 1 to 8 weeks. Once you're usually over that 8-week threshold, we consider you to be long-term, and we'll transfer you to the long-term unit. And we do have patients that have been there for quite a number of years based on their, specific circumstances.
Okay. And what changes, if you could, what immediate changes have you guys had to make during this time that's different for you now?
Well, the first thing that we actually did was we went into lockdown, which meant only essential staff in and out. The patients are no longer allowed visitors. They're not allowed to commingle with patients on other units anymore, so they're more a bit isolative. And normally we offer different courses throughout the day for both the acute and the long-term patients. So those courses are now temporarily put on hold because we're trying to reduce the amount of patients in the same vicinity at the same time.
Okay. And I'll come back to some questions as well. And so, Ms. Rhonda, you are on the administrative side. So you are currently working from home, right? And I think, again,
Yeah.
we often forget that all of this exists within hospitals and healthcare systems. And even for those of you on an administrative end, lots of adjustments have had to be made in order to protect persons and protect you, protect your family to the best of your ability, and to hopefully stem the spread of COVID-19. What are some of the changes that that most immediately have been put in place to protect everyone, even as an administrator?
Well, the first thing we did, similar to everywhere else, I guess, in the US, is we did lockdown. Everyone coming into the building had to wear masks. All our staff were given surgical masks to wear. We also began testing the staff as they came into the employee entrance, which we only have designated for employees. And we mandated that they all use employee entrance. So when they came in, we checked the temperatures. We had them use the hand sanitizers that were on the wall as they entered into the building. And we just try to practice social distancing, do our regular meetings. If we didn't have to have a meeting in the early stages, we made sure that we did it over some sort of call-in or Zoom.
Okay, and so technology
then
abounds.
yes, we had to revert back to using technology for mostly everything. And then all the workers in the administrative respect were sent home. Of course, we had to do a lot of security stuff to make sure that there's no breaches when we log on to our systems, because I'm still dealing with private information for patients and stuff. And one of my tasks working from home is I am monitoring the exposure list for all our healthcare workers.
Well, what does that mean? When you say the exposure list, what are we talking about?
Okay, so everyone that comes in contact with a possible patient that is either under investigation or was actually positive for corona, we look at what measures were in place while they were in contact with that person. So, for example, if they were not wearing their mask, that's a high risk exposure. And so we have to send them home, have them quarantined for 14 days because the risk is so great.
Okay, and I know that in a already stretched healthcare system, I know that presents extra challenges even when the decision is made to send someone home, I can imagine.
Yes, but what we have done is we've closed off different units so that we can have staff pulled from those areas. All the outpatient areas, we've pulled some staff from like our outpatient clinics, and we've diverted them to come in to try to help with that process.
Okay.
So it's not perfect. We're still having challenges with staffing, but it's doable for now, I guess.
Okay, managing for now. So back to Mawish. So being in a COVID-19 hospital, coming from a hospital that was just a general hospital where you had a whole mix of patients into a specialty hospital. And one of the things that you pointed out to me was you felt more unsafe, so to speak, in the earlier stages, being in a general hospital because you didn't have the strict measures in place. If you could explain to me what was at the time, because of course we're weeks out from you having been in Texas and then going to Minnesota to a COVID-19 hospital, what were the procedures in place while you were in Texas at that time?
Well, before I came here to Minnesota, of course, this is when everything first started to happen. So everything was new. We didn't have enough information about how it was transmitted. A lot of hospitals hadn't yet implemented the same protocols as Rhonda has already mentioned. So you're walking into the hospital with the unknown. Until they test the patient, you wasn't sure if they had come into contact with corona, if they may be an asymptomatic carrier and have other symptoms that are not typical COVID symptoms, that are the respiratory cough and shortness of breath and fever, because there were patients that were coming in there with GI, which is stomach issues. or urinary tract infection, something minor that you would not even consider to be associated with corona or COVID 19, and you just didn't know. So on a regular basis, as a nurse, you're not wearing a mask into rooms, for something that is not respiratory that you know of. So that was the scary part, because we were coming in and out of rooms before they implemented where everyone had to wear a surgical mask everywhere in the hospital. You just was unsure about what was going on with that patient, and you just didn't know what you came into contact with. So that was the scary part of working before more measures were implemented into the hospital.
Okay, and then you moved to the COVID-19 hospital 3 weeks ago, is it now?
Yes, it's been about 3 weeks.
Okay, so about 3 weeks. And what were the measures? And of course, this is where you would only come in contact with patients who had tested positive for COVID-19 and needed to be hospitalized. What were the measures that were in place at that time when you arrived?
So some of the measures similar to what Rhonda mentioned is during orientation, they checked everyone's temperature. They would ask us, the questionnaire in regards to have we had any contact with any known persons with corona, had we had any travel internationally or domestically in places that are hot spots, and did we ourselves have any symptoms that we knew of. So we were screened on orientation before we started working. And at the time when I did have orientation, the hospital was not yet open. So once we did start getting patients in, then we went over the protocols on what kind of, PPE, which is personal protective equipment that you would wear before going into rooms. So currently our practice right now is we were wearing, the gowns, gloves, face shield, and also a mask of some sort. Now, the mask that we're wearing has changed on a day-to-day basis according to CDC guidelines. At first when we started, they said surgical mask, was appropriate, which is the lesser filtering mask. But now every day when we go into the rooms, we're wearing N95 masks currently.
Okay. And I think one of the things that's been highlighted for me speaking to all of you leading up to this show, and I think I want everyone's perspective on this. This is not a static situation, right? In all of your facilities, are things changing on a daily basis? And so, Mawish, how often do things change for you?
I would say almost every other day or every few days, they're putting out a new notice on something. So like I said, when we first started, they were telling us to wear a surgical mask into the room for the med surg area. And only N95 if it was an aerosolized procedure that's being done. And what they mean by aerosolized procedure is if the patient is getting a respiratory treatment, like a nebulizer, or they are on a ventilator, or some type of breathing machine, or high flow oxygen. Those were aerosolized procedures, and would be in a negative flow pressurized room. Negative flow meaning that it kind of exchanges the air very frequently, and it sucks the air out and puts it outside instead of recirculating it inside the room. And then, like I said, now we started implementing where we wear the N95 mask, which is a higher filtration mask, to go into the rooms regardless of whether it's a negative pressure room or not. And then, as a healthcare professional, normally we're used to only using masks one time. So there's new guidelines that are being put out every couple of days by CDC and that are being implemented by the hospital in regards to reusing masks, how often we can reuse them, what is the time extent that we have to wait before we use the mask that we first used, reusing gowns now, and just different protocols on the protective equipment that we're currently using.
And Ms. Rhonda, when you and I spoke, that was something that you mentioned to me, which was this aspect of the fact that these are usually single-use items, right? The mask, the PPE in general, but because you now are in a situation, or healthcare professionals are in a situation where you're having to receive guidance on reusing this equipment, if I'm correct.
Yes. as everyone from the US knows, and everywhere else, we only use single-use mask once. Now, they're telling, and not even just once, in the sense that it was once when you went into a particular room, you would discard that. Now it's like you're basically wearing that mask for the entire day, right? So, a lot of that has come to the forefront. And of course, we know we have issues and challenges where supplies are in limited amounts, all over the US, all over the world, basically.
Which is why those precautions are put in. I guess why those measures are now put in place, because of the limitations. And for you, Stacy, how often would you say you're receiving notices or changes to what you're doing, in terms of precautionary measures or procedural changes?
I would say very frequently. As soon as CDC changes, we change as well. Like I said, initially we went into just lockdown, and then we went to, we have to only use the staff entrance. And then it was stepped up to, you're going to have your temperature checked once you enter the building, and a pre-screening is done. And now you have to wear a mask. From the time you enter the building, you have to wear a mask. And, yes, we are faced with that same challenge of you're wearing the same mask all day long. And the length of time where we're using these surgical masks are a bit longer than we would normally use, in terms of we're using them more than one day. So that's an issue there with how long we're using the mask, plus the supply. The supply is very, very limited. And then more recently, we stepped it up to every new admission that we get are automatically put on droplet precaution for 14 days, which means that if that patient is coming out of their room, they have to be wearing a mask. So those are some of the changes that we have made thus far.
Okay, and so everything's continuing to transition. Ashley, what about you? How often are you seeing changes?
Pretty much every day it's something else, but it's the same precautions coming in to work. Employees only use one parking garage, one entrance. They're checking the temperatures, asking questions, things like that. We no longer have, in the morning time, we would have like a huddle, just discussing about what's going on. We no longer do things like that. We go straight out onto the floor. So it's pretty much the same, but every day things change. Even while we're at work, they're telling us, oh, well, we're now doing this. So we're just trying to follow CDC guidelines, which I understand.
Okay, so you're just trying to do the best you can.
Yeah.
We had a few comments come in on Facebook. Johnny Joke says, can we please give these women, as well as all other medical staff worldwide, a standing ovation? Chantel Scale says, Stacy, I see you, mama. Christine Zappa says, go sis, represent for us nurses, so proud. And she goes on to say, so proud of all these nurses. And so the people are watching, they are saying thank you, they appreciate you. And I saw a post the other day, and that's like real talk. Now you guys are wearing these masks all the time, okay? Now a shift in what is normal daily routine for y'all. Let me ask it this way: how pleasant of an experience is that? Because I've even seen posts where people are asking people to make, for healthcare workers, in essence, a band that attaches to stop the elastic of the mask behind your ears, from basically not having to have it stuck behind your ears, right? So while it's a precaution, is it uncomfortable?
It is.
Okay,
it is. You get stuffy in there. I mean, you're wearing it depending on what shift you're working. Most days I'm working 12-hour shifts, and it gets stuffy. It gets annoying.
And I even saw another nurse on Facebook. She was talking about, because I think in her hospital she was wearing a mask and I guess goggles. Please forgive my non-medical terminology. And just speaking to the fact that it fogs up the mask and things like that, that makes it that much more challenging, to do the job. And in it sounds like most of you, if you're in the hospital right now, are wearing masks all the time. Are you also having to wear protective eye equipment?
I'll
No.
speak to that.
Okay.
Well, at the nursing station, we're still continuing to wear our N95 mask and our surgical mask at the station. Yes, they are very uncomfortable wearing them for 12 hours. A lot of times, these masks can cause you to have anxiety, claustrophobia, because you're sitting there with this thing that is you're breathing, into this confined area for 12 hours. And also, like you were saying, the pressure of having that mask on your face and on your ears. Me, while especially in the nursing station, which is like a higher risk area than stepping off the unit, we like to keep them on just, for precaution and making sure that we're still keeping ourselves safe, even while in the hallways. So taking them off, we take them off maybe 3 times in a day for a 12-hour shift, and that's just so you can have a break to eat, so you can have a break to drink, so you have the dehydration thing that's going on because you're not drinking water as often as you can, because you would have to remove that mask in order to drink, in order to eat. And I would see the pressure marks of the mask, from pressing onto your face, and them rubbing up on your ears, which it can cause pressure sores over time, if that from wearing it for so long. So
Which was something I'd seen, like a Facebook picture essentially of like the pressure sores that you're talking about, especially in medical professionals in states where they may have been having been battling this at a higher level for a longer period, essentially causing like cuts and sores behind their ears, right? Is what you're referring to, Mawish, if I'm correct, just so people understand when you say like a pressure mark or a pressure sore.
Yes, it's basically where the skin starts eroding, getting weak and breaking because of the pressure of wearing this thing for such a prolonged time, and your skin is not used to that. You normally don't wear things for very long.
And because I think all of you who are working actively in the hospital right now, are in essence all wearing your mask virtually all the time at this point.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and I thought it was the same for all of you. We do have to go out to break. Guys, to the audience, we will be back to continue to speak to these 4 nurses who are on the front lines in the United States during this global pandemic. So keep it locked to Straight Talk on Star 92.7. Thanks to all of you who are currently tuned in via Facebook and through all the other mediums. We appreciate you. This conversation will continue all the way at 6 o'clock my time, 7 o'clock for some of you, depending on the time zones that you're in, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But we'll be right back after this break.
Join the conversation. The phone lines are now open. 943-3700. You can also find us on Facebook or email us at straighttalkci@gmail.com.
Think about something that makes you happy. Did it make you smile? We know it did, because that's what we do at Sagicor. Put smiles on our clients' faces every day. With a large range of products to cover your family, it's no wonder most locals choose Sagicor for their life insurance needs. Serving the community for over 25 years. Let us put a smile on your face. Call your Sagicor advisor today.
Burger King has been your family restaurant for many years. Bringing you delicious food in a safe environment has always been our #1 priority. And until further notice, you'll only be able to visit us via drive-thru.
Get your motor running, pulling out past Red Bay, looking for a BK at whatever time of day. Burger King drive-thru.
Burger King's drive-thru is open at 7 Mile Beach, Waterfront Georgetown, Walkers Road, or Red Bay for breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Kathy and Johnny were preparing for a party when suddenly something came up from the potty. The sink was clogged. They couldn't blame that on the dog. So Johnny took out his tools to look like a hero, but Kathy knew better. She gave him a 0. She knew what to do in the interest of time. Plus, we need to hurry. I'm running out of rhyme. To get rid of this mess, she reached out to the best and called Watler and Hislop to handle the rest. If you want to put them to the test, auger cast pilings, deep well drilling, and heavy equipment services would be your best bet.
Call Watler and Hislop Services, Cayman's #1 choice, 949-4880, or visit equipmentservices.ky.
In this time of crisis, we are right here to help keep the power on.
We are here to serve you. We are committed to ensuring that you have electricity. Without electricity, not many things will work.
We are right here to help keep the power turned on.
We are CUC. You can count on us.
Welcome back to Straight Talk with Ruth Anna on Star 927.
We are back, folks, and thank you for keeping it locked to Straight Talk on Star 92.7 FM radio. I am joined in studio this afternoon. For those of you who are just tuning in, I have 4 nurses out of the United States joining me via live video stream this afternoon. You can follow the video stream on the Star 92.7 Facebook page, of course, also on the Star 92.7 FM via the radio. And the phone lines are open. 943-3700 is the line in studio, or you can email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. And I think, did we lose someone there? Okay, so hopefully she will be able to join back in. But I am currently, if you're watching online, I am currently joined by Ashley from Orlando, Rhonda from Miami, Stacy in Virginia, and hopefully we get back Miss Mawish, who is currently in Minnesota. But I also want to talk about on a more with all of you. You know, I know some of you have families at home, and you're going into this environment and coming back home to your families and what that means for you. So if you could all talk about that a little bit, because I think it is easy for us to forget that you every day, because of the sheer numbers in the United States of America, at any point you could be encountering a COVID positive patient unbeknownst to you, because with the exception of Mawish, none of you are in COVID-19 hospitals. Mawish would know. Yes, she's dealing with a COVID positive patient. However, the other 3 of you, there is no certainty. And I think of at least 2 of you that I know about have families, have children. What is that like for you, going into work every day to the unknown, and then returning home to your family? And I know that Miss Rhonda, I know you have your kids, although you're working mostly from home, but you still go into the hospital periodically. And I think Ashley, if I'm correct, you also have kids?
Yes, I have a 5-year-old.
Okay, so if Ashley and Miss Rhonda, and how about you, Stacy? Do you have any kids?
Yes, I have a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Okay, so if you guys could speak to that, let's go in alphabetical order, right? So Ashley, what are some of the things that you think about and that you are facing in terms of going into work and then coming back home to your family? What precautions are you taking when you return home?
Well, not a lot has changed for me, because my husband says I'm paranoid, but I've always took precaution. So when I come home, I always get undressed in my garage. I never bring my work clothes in. My shoes stay in my car. I wipe down, if I know I'm going to be home for a few days, I'll wipe down my car, like sanitize it, my seatbelt, steering wheel, like everything. So that hasn't changed. The one thing, though, that has changed a lot of with my husband having to now, because he also goes into the hospital, he's now having to take the same measures. And when we come home to our daughter, it's no, we can't give you a hug or kiss. We have to go and take a shower and do things like that.
Okay, so showers first, in addition to all the other precautions you were taking, showers first and before all of this snuggly and the hugs and kisses, right? And I think that is generally so the guidance that many of us have been given, even just as members of the general public, when you go out and interact with other persons, to come home, take off the clothes, take a shower, all of those things before interacting with other people. And how about you, Miss Rhonda? What precautions, if any, are you taking when you return home?
I think most nurses, and I don't know, maybe it's a Caribbean nurses thing, we're all compulsive about germs that we're bringing home. So I think we pretty much practice the same thing. My kids are 14 and 16. this kind of technically. So they've known how mommy works from the time I was, they were small. So they can't come running to me when I have my uniform on. They can't come and hug me until I've taken that off, had a shower and all that. So that hasn't changed. But what has changed is we are, I don't think that I thought about how often we put our hands to our face on a daily basis. And sometimes I just sit and I look at them and I'm like, okay, your hand is in your face. When was the last time it was washed? So we had, like this every hour you have to go and wash your hands. If you went outside, even if it's just to the mailbox, when you came back in, you had to wash your hands. Every day they got up, they had to clean the doorknobs with wipes and things like that. All their devices, the things, their little games that they play, everything have to be wiped down every day. Simple things like that we weren't really paying so close attention to, have now been part of our routine.
Okay, and then how about you, Stacy?
The same as like Rhonda was saying, we are a little paranoid. So I've always taken off my shoes and left them in the car. My shoes don't ever come inside. I've taken it a step further, like Ashley was saying, when I come in, I go straight to the bathroom, take a shower. And then, luckily for me, when I come home, my kids are already in bed. So when I come back out, I try to wipe down the doorknobs and anything that I touched on my way in. So those are some of the things, the precaution that I have been doing. And then recently I took it a step further, like Ashley, and I started wiping down my steering wheel and my seatbelt, because that is where I'm mostly at after work. I'm in the car. So I try to wipe down the car as well.
And for you, Mawish, I don't know if do you share like living quarters with anyone else that's not in the hospital, or even, I'm thinking, even if you're sharing with other nurses, for example, you may not have the same shifts. Do you live alone? Or are you sharing with other people?
Well, currently the agency has provided us with hotel accommodations, and because of normally we would share a hotel room with one other person when we usually take contracts, but because of this whole COVID-19 situation, pandemic, we have private rooms, but the hotel is constantly wiping down the surfaces in the lobby where we go get food and where we sit and eat and things like that. And for the most part, they've said for us to stay in our rooms as much as possible, so not really to congregate in the hotel lobby. And hang out down there. We're still practicing social distancing as much as we can right now in the in the hotel. And I do the same thing. Actually, our hospital has now provided us with the hospital scrubs. So when I go into the locker room first. We put on the hospital scrubs and everything that we wear during our shift. Before I leave, I go back to the locker room, wipe down my shoes, my phone, all of those things that I touched during the day, even while I was at the hospital, and change my clothes and leave my hospital shoes outside the hotel door, and I just leave it out there and go straight to the shower when I get in as well.
Okay, and so just to make sure you don't take anything extra inside the room, what do you guys think that the rest of us, the general members of the public, don't know? Because I feel like if I was a nurse or a healthcare professional walking around, in normal society, I might look at the rest of us like most of society was probably loony, right? In terms of the things we may not know, or the things that we are doing or not doing that we should be doing or not doing, for example. What are some of the things that you walk around when if you have to go to the grocery store or any of those things? Do you guys look at the rest of us like we're crazy, saying these people don't know that X, Y, and Z? What are we still doing? At least, I know in the US measures may be different, but what are people doing that you're like, I wish you guys would stop that?
Wearing gloves.
I'll take that.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
I think that is probably what everybody is looking at. The gloves. I have no problem with the mask, but I sit and I watch people and they have the gloves and they're touching different things, and they're going into their bags and they're taking things out, and then they go and they put their hands to fix the mask, and I'm like, No, you can't do that.
Okay.
And then I see people who have mask on, but it's below their nose.
Mm.
So what are we doing?
Mhm.
No,
Okay.
right? I've went to the post office and I've seen the post office worker doing that. And I told her, no, don't do that. They've installed plexiglasses for them, which is good, but it doesn't make any sense to leave your nose uncovered. So and I understand why, because we wear the mask and we know it gets really hot under there. So we understand that they would not want to have it on all day over their nose. But you can't not out in public. You can't have that mask just, and then you're touching your face and you're touching your eyes with dirty gloves. Yeah, that's
Okay.
we
So
don't like that.
with
We
the
don't like that.
gloves, because I think that some people think that by putting on the mask and putting on the gloves, that the gloves are there to, like, stop the germs from passing through your hands, right? Like I actually think that that's what people think, what many of us think, that we put the gloves on to protect our hands somehow, right? But that's not actually the reality of what happens when you wear gloves, if I'm correct. Like,
Well,
what should we do or not do?
well, in the hospital, when nurses are wearing gloves, we switch them out every time we touch something. We're going to a new area. We're doing a new task. We're changing them. So the fact that you're keeping on the same gloves for however long that you're keeping on, and like Rhonda said, touching this, touching that, going in your pocket to look at your phone, you touching your phone, you pick up the phone call, you put your phone to your face with the gloves on. Basically, these gloves are now your hands. So it makes no sense to even wear them out in public when simply you can just continue to wash your hands or use hand sanitizer as much as you can, even while you're out in public.
Okay, so we need gloves or no gloves. We just need to stop touching everything and then touching our faces, because gloves aren't like, it's not like a superhero glove, right? If we don't do the right things when we have them on, it makes no difference anyway. So Wendy Clark, who is tuned in via Facebook, says during their service, has any of the nurses assisted a patient or patient who tested positive for COVID-19? If so, can they speak to their experience in caring for patients who cannot see their family members and who may be fearful? And I guess there may be others of you, but I think the first person that I would go to with this is Mawish, right? Because Mawish, for those who are just tuning in, Mawish is in Minnesota in a COVID-19 hospital, which means that in the ward that she is in, that is the only type of patient that she is seeing. And so, are there guests allowed at all in your hospital?
Not at all. Only employees come in and out of the hospital. Very, very rare instances. We have guests come, and recently they've done that only for one patient who they knew was tentatively passing away. So they let one family member at a time come and visit that patient. But our general policy is no visitors at all. So the only way that the patients can see or talk to their families is if they have an iPhone, they can FaceTime, talk to them over the phone, and really just use technology. Visitors aren't allowed. Period.
What are the
Which is very, I'm sorry, to answer the second part to that question, which can be very hard for patients because they're in a situation, that is unknown to them. They've never, experienced these type of symptoms. It's scary. It's very scary for them. A lot of them are anxious. A lot of them are fearful. I had one patient who is not elderly, I would say, come in there, and she was very, very tearful. Scared because of even coming to the COVID hospital because she thought she was coming there to die. And, that's not the case. You're just coming to get better so that you can go home and be safely, around your family and stable enough so that you can be okay for when you do go home.
And that, I think that's it's such a interesting perspective to have to digest, right? That, as you said, this patient felt like, okay, I'm going to the hospital and it means I'm going to the hospital to die. That was how she saw it. That's what she thought of it. And for the rest of you, I know, I don't think so, but I want to ask, or have any any of you otherwise had to like encountered persons that you knew were COVID positive outside of Mawish, or so far you have not?
We had 3 possible cases. So we treated them as if they were positive until we, cleared them fully to be negative. Um, the challenges that we had with those patients is, it's a psychiatric mental health facility. We're already on lockdown, so they do not have that physical contact that they would normally have with their families, and then to have to isolate them to their room where they cannot come out and socialize with any of the other patients on their unit. They cannot come out and watch the TV, or they have to wear these masks. We did have one of the patients really got upset about it, and he became really tearful because it's a stress. It's stressful to be admitted to a psychiatric facility, and it's even more stress added that now you're being treated as if you're possibly infected. So it, on top of his issues that he already came in with, it compounded the situation. So it's very stressful for the patients as well, having to deal with it.
Okay. I think, what about you, Ashley? Any suspected cases or cases that you knew of? You are a labor and delivery nurse, and I think that a lot of women have questions about, well, what if I catch, and the concerns around if they've been exposed with COVID, to COVID during pregnancy. Have you guys had anyone on the ward that was suspected, during pregnancy to have COVID-19, or knew that they were COVID-19 positive?
So we've had a few suspected on our unit, but they all were negative, the ones that we had on our unit. But we do have a handful that are actually positive, but they didn't come to our unit. They send them to an actual designated COVID unit in a different part of the hospital.
To deliver?
Not to deliver. We're trying to keep them pregnant, so they're not quite yet ready.
Okay.
But we know that they're positive, so they're out there, but they're since now gone home. But it's still that thought of, well, eventually they do have to come in to deliver their babies. We don't know at what point, and if they'll still have symptoms at that point. But the few that we've had that have been ruled out negative, we took the precautions. Their spouse or whoever was with them at that point remained in the room. They had their mask on, which all of our patients, all of the staff, everyone wears a mask. We're still open to the option. We've heard many things of, if you're positive, that they'll go for a C-section. As of now, CDC is not recommending that, so they can still labor. We just have to make sure we have on our protective wear, and that is quite challenging for our patients. Some of them are already complaining of pushing with a mask on, but
oh my word, I can't even imagine. Heavens up above. I wouldn't have thought about that. So if they right now, if they are in labor and they are, is it across the board, or just if they're
across the board, whether they're positive, symptomatic at all, every patient, every labor patient has to wear masks. Now, even in our C-sections, it would be everyone in the OR wearing masks except for the patient. Now the patient wears a mask. And if for any reason they had to intubate, so put mom to sleep, then we all now put on the N95 mask.
Heavens up above. I cannot even fathom laboring with a mask on my face. That would be just absolutely dreadful. I'm going to just put that out there. So shout out to all of the moms across the world that have had to endure or will endure that experience. You are superheroes, right? And to that, actually, Wendy
Can
Clark,
I say something?
yes, sure.
No, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, it's a question that came in, so I want you to add what you want to add first, and then I'll go to the question that Wendy Clark has on Facebook.
I've been keeping up to date with some of the literature around and some of the news media, right? So one of the things that startled me was patients who came to labor and the spouse was positive and knew that they were at least tested, or a person under investigation is what we call them, and did not disclose that to the staff, right? And I understand that the general public is scared, but understand that we are working with very limited resources, And if we can avoid being exposed, we're not going to treat you as, any differently or anything, but we just need to know so that we could protect ourselves, right? Because as you see, most of us, we have family that we have to come back home to as well, or we're trying to get back home to. We're sacrificing a lot, right? And especially those on the front line. I'm not sacrificing much, but for those on the front line, especially, it's really heartbreaking for me to see stuff like that, knowing fully well that, we're just putting people at risk that is unnecessary, right? So one of the things that I'd like to put out there, I get that the public is scared, but help us to help you.
So if you know that you are at risk, or you have tested positive, or as a person under investigation, because for those who may just be coming into the conversation, what she has said is there are situations where women are going into labor and are coming into hospitals with spouses that have tested positive for COVID but aren't saying so, and so the necessary precautions, I guess, haven't been put in place around that because the healthcare staff were unaware, and so simply just say so that everyone can be protected, right? And these are all the things that globally people are grappling with, and of course, you guys are in the US, and where numbers are soaring, and whether there's a realistic grip on numbers or not. These are the numbers that we know of, and as nurses, you are day in, day out, dealing with this. I will ask a question that came in from Wendy Clark, and she says, the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented in our lifetime. Nurses and healthcare professionals are our heroes. As you are also human, what do you do to keep yourself, your family, and others at your working environment cheerful? As difficult as that may be. Who wants to take that one first?
Well, if you're a night shift nurse, then sadly it's all about the food. And anyone that has worked with me before, or even went to school with me, know that I'm the type that will bake something and bring to share with my colleagues. So you just do stuff to yeah, you have to do stuff to keep each other like perfect, and you also have to look out for each other outside of work, because like I recently was out sick for a few days, and my everyone checked in on me. They went as far as to even put together a nice little care package and send for me, because I couldn't go out to do anything. So you have to not only look out for each other at work, but you have to check in on each other at home, make sure that emotionally, mentally, physically, everyone is holding up fine. But like I said, for me at work, it's all about the food.
Anyone else bringing food to work, or how are you keeping the people around you cheerful?
Well, keeping everyone around each other is really just the encouragement. First, I start with myself, making sure that I keep my own self sane, whatever way that I can do that. There's aromatherapy, lavender, eucalyptus, things that help calm your nerves, calm your anxiety, and calm you down. For me, dancing is a big thing. So on my days off, I will be dancing in the living room of my hotel room, doing my dance classes still. And it's really just reaching out, making sure that your family, your friends, your loved ones, your coworkers are doing okay. Asking them, how are they doing? What can I do to ease it up for you? Even if it is, sending a little care package to someone to kind of cheer them up and uplift them. And for me, also, gospel music is a big thing. Gospel music has always been kind of like a sense of peace and cheerfulness. So I've been playing a lot more than I used to.
Okay. How about you, Ashley?
Definitely prayer, and like she said, gospel music to keep us up. But at work, we're allowed a little bit of music. So we do, every day we go in, we get someone who wants to choose what genre they want to listen to. And some of those are a little bit fun to hear different music. But as well as we have such a great team that we just keep each other entertained. So whatever is going on, we may make a little joke out of that, and everyone's like just having a good time, but still not forgetting how serious COVID is and how we want to keep ourselves and our families and patients safe.
Awesome. And how about you, Miss Rhonda? I know you are the what's a lot of mothers are grappling right now that are working from home, and in your capacity as a nurse, you are a nurse on the administrative side and working from home, but also have children who are trying to get their schoolwork done at home. How are you balancing that and trying to keep everyone in a good mood and sane and all of those things?
I think I'm failing miserably.
I feel like that's a sentiment of so many mothers, and thank you for being transparent and honest about that.
I said to them, I think the children are trying to fire me from being the teacher, but I'm here. I'm doing the best that I can. In addition to trying to, deal with work, and we do a lot of discussions. We have, we talk a lot about COVID. We talk a lot about what could happen, what the possibilities are. We talk a lot about what if, we have this in our home, what do we do? So we have, 2 contingency plans in place that everybody is aware of in case, this happens. And I also explain to them the severity of what if you start to become symptomatic. And I love my children. I'm with them all the time. I'm huggy, kissy, kissy, kissy. What if you have symptoms and I have to isolate you? So we talk about that so that God forbid it doesn't happen. We pray about it. But, in the event that it does, what are we going to do? So each person understands that, okay, it's not that, you're not loved anymore or whatever. It's that this is what it has to be for this time.
Okay.
So we talk a lot. We have a lot of fun times. We, play music. We, dance. They think mommy is crazy, but, we what we do to get by.
Most of us are kind of crazy, so we all have our own brand of crazy, as I say. It's fine. Miss Yvonne Warwick, who is tuned in, says, "Thank you, ladies, for your time today. Be safe. I salute you all." And Wendy Clark also saying, "We have heard Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry and many others who appeal to the African American communities in the USA, who it is said may not take COVID-19 seriously. What would you say to the general public who may not think that this virus is a big deal?" And I know that that's a hefty question, but in the interest of time, I will ask you guys to each respond, but limit your response to about a minute if you can, and so that then we can close out the show. So we'll just keep going in the alphabetical order. Ashley, if you could tackle that. For those who don't take it seriously or think it's a big deal, what do you say to them?
It is real, definitely. I've had so many discussions of that. But just be aware that people are getting sick. It is a virus out there. Not everyone is dying. I think that's something that's my pet peeve of no one's recovering. They're seeing all these numbers climbing, but there are people out there that are recovering. And definitely be safe. If you feel that it's not something that is not of importance to you right now or real in your life, at least be safe for others. So take those precautions and stay at home if you don't need to be out.
Okay. And thank you for that. Mawish, any guidance from you?
I agree a lot with what Ashley was saying. Really, I just have to think, it's not about you. A lot of us think that we're immune. No one is immune. A lot of us also think, oh, I'm young and I'm healthy, so I don't have to worry about it. You may not have to worry about it, but you have to think about your family members, your friends, because a lot of the population that are more susceptible to getting terminally sick, I would say we do have a lot of people that recover, but people who are at risk for potentially passing away from the virus are people with comorbidities, people who have diabetes, heart conditions, also elderly. You don't know if you're an asymptomatic carrier at any point. So the fact that you carrying on with regular life saying that, oh, it doesn't faze me, this isn't going to touch me, whoever you're going to come into contact with, it may affect them more. So you have to kind of take yourself out of it and the selfishness of only thinking about yourself and think of like, oh, well, if I'm asymptomatic and I hang out with my homeboy and we having barbecue, this homeboy could also be an asymptomatic carrier and I gave it to him. Now he's asymptomatic, but then he goes to go see his grandmother because he thinks he's fine. He doesn't have any symptoms. And now grandma is getting sick. So you have to think of the chain effect of who you're going to come into contact with and affect in the long run.
Thank you for that. And I'm past my time, so I won't have the time to get to the rest of you, the other two ladies on the line. But I want to say thank you. Wendy Clark says, thank you, ladies, for your time. We appreciate you. I thank the four of you for joining me this afternoon. We may have to do a check-in a few weeks from now to see where things are at that time. But please stay safe. Lots of love, light, and prayers in your direction for those of you fighting on the front line. We appreciate you, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Straight Talk on Star 92.7. Guys, it is 6:04 on the Star 92.7 clock, which means I'm about to be out of here. And again, please stay safe, everyone, and hashtag stay home Cayman, and keep it locked to Star 92.7.
Connection to culture.